It's the thing that I got from my favorite music, right? And from the people I was the biggest fans of. And I want to be able to return that feeling to the people who get something out of our music.
Welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, the go-to podcast for high performers. I'm Andrew Moses, and each week I talk with Olympians, pro athletes, TV stars, Grammy winners, best-selling authors, CEOs, and other high performers to uncover their success secrets. Every conversation is jam-packed with inspiration and actionable ideas we all can apply to our own lives, personally and professionally. Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the techniques, processes, and mindsets powering the world's most successful people. Let's go. This week, my guest is Hootie and the Blowfish lead guitarist, Mark Bryan. If you've been listening to Everybody Pulls the Tarp for a while now, then you may remember two past episodes I shared featuring conversations with Hootie and the Blowfish drummer, Jim Sony Sonnefeld. Many of you have shared how much you enjoyed my conversations with Sony, and I'm excited that this week we get to explore Mark's story as well. At age 15, Mark and eventual Hootie bandmate Dean Felber played their first gig. It was a friend's Sweet 16 at a local Holiday Inn. And then a few years later, Mark and Dean, along with Sony and Darius Rucker, were performing at small bars and fraternity parties at the University of South Carolina. They booked their own gigs, hung up posters to promote their shows, and scraped money together to reserve time at local recording studios. And then in 1994, Hootie and the Blowfish released their first album, Cracked Rear View, and it went on to become a massive success. The album featured now iconic hits like Hold My Hand, Let Her Cry, and Only Want to Be With You. And the album hit number 1 on the Billboard charts. Here's a quick clip of Only Want to Be With You.
I'm such a baby, cause the dolphins make me cry. Well, there's nothing I can do. I only want to be with you.
Mark and the band went on to win 2 Grammy Awards, released 6 more studio albums, and have since sold over 25 million albums worldwide. Mark and I recorded the conversation you are about to hear back in August, while Hootie and the Blowfish was amidst their 2024 Summer Camps with Trucks tour, a 43-city tour across the U.S. and Canada where the band packed arenas and amphitheaters with fans. In addition to his work with Hootie, Mark continues to maintain a nonstop pursuit of different creative endeavors and business ventures as well. Mark has released a series of well-received solo albums, including his latest solo album, Popped. He is also the producer for an array of other artists and the creator and host of an Emmy Award-winning PBS concert series called Live at the Charleston Music Hall. And like a true tarp puller, Mark is always committed to passing on his ideas and experiences to the next generation, and from 2009 to 2019, taught as an adjunct professor at College of Charleston. The episode you are about to hear is a behind-the-scenes look at Mark's extraordinary career and his creative process. You'll hear powerful ideas on learning from others, trying new things, and connecting authentically with whoever it is you are trying to reach. This conversation is about so much more than music. It's about connection, creativity, and taking on new challenges, no matter how much success you've already achieved. I had so much fun talking to Mark, and I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. So let's pull the tarp and get straight to Mark Bryan. Mark, where I want to begin, you started writing songs as a teenager. I'm curious, when you think about it, what's your first musical memory? I want to start there.
A really early one is I was about 5 or 6 years old when the Jesus Christ Superstar soundtrack came out, and she used to listen to that a lot, and she took us to see it. I went as a 5 or 6 year old to see the play, and then heard the record a lot at the house, and it was a big hit at the time. Andrew Lloyd Webber, I guess, and a lot of those songs stuck with me over the years. And interestingly, but I was really young when that was just a big hit, and my mom was all in on it, so I have a very early memory of that.
Very early memory, 5, 6 years old. So when do you recall writing your first song or anything that resembled a song?
I think I had some cool ideas when I was little, here and there, but nothing that I really remember hung on to until one time when I was about, I guess, 15 years old or 16, and I had just started playing guitar pretty heavily, and I got grounded one night. I wasn't allowed to go out, but my mom let my friend come over, my buddy Lip, and Lip was also just starting to play guitar. And so Lip and I spent about 3 hours in my room that night, and we wrote like 8 songs, and like 2 or 3 of them were okay. Like there were ones I wouldn't be ashamed to play today, you know. So I think and coming out of that night, we both were like, damn, that was really fun, and maybe something we could do, you know, maybe we're both not half bad at it. And so I got the bug for it from that and just kept writing. I've been writing ever since, you know.
What was it like when you think about that night? Like, what was it that you think you enjoyed so much about it?
For sure, it was the whatever happens in the moment, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. Whatever happens in the moment, just let it flow through you. And we didn't know that as a rule at the time, or it's not like we read some book, or, you know, that's what we were doing in the moment. You know, we were living and with our guitars and beating on them and come up with stupid words and writing them all down. And we had a tape recorder and hitting record on everything. But when you go back, every time you do that in your life, you know, where you have a stream of conscious moment, there's always a collection of maybe profound, deeper stuff. And so we found some of that night. And like I said, there's a song or two from that collection that I would still even play today, you know, but that feeling of like, hey, we actually tapped into something for a second there. That was my favorite part of it.
Very interesting. And I'm curious. So obviously you have that moment where the songwriting bug starts to kind of catch on for you. When was the first time that you played the guitar for an audience of more than 1 or 2 people?
That's it. I can't answer that question because it was with Dean, the bass player from Hootie, and we were a cool cover band. We were still 15, but our friend Kim Miller turned 16. And so she had a Sweet 16 party, and she hired our band to come play. And it was our first gig that we ever did live. And it was at a Holiday Inn ballroom for her Sweet 16 party. And the first song we played was No One Like You by the Scorpions, which was a giant hit at the time. And I remember I was playing the rhythm guitar part, and the lead guitar player and I were both playing through the same Fender Twin. So whenever I would go like, it would drown out his lead, like, I would drown him out because we were in the same amp. Yeah, that was our first gig.
So what do you remember, aside from that story you told there about kind of drowning him out, what do you remember most about kind of the feeling you had when you looked at the audience? Because we'll get into all the Hootie and the Blowfish stuff. And I mean, obviously, one of the things that you guys are known for most is just your ability to connect with audiences and your ability to be yourself. I'm curious, like when you think about that first gig, do you remember having a moment where you saw a reaction from the audience or you felt a connection with the audience, and that was something that maybe also started to kind of pick up a little bug inside you?
Right. So from that very first moment at the Sweet 16 party until we play Jones Beach next week, like the music connects with the crowd. It creates an energy from the crowd. And as a musician, you feed off of that energy, and then your performance takes a step up, and then that goes out to the crowd, and then they get more fired up. And it's this thing that happens, a magical thing that happens through music. I felt it from note one, playing it live that night and at the Sweet 16 party. I feel it at every show we do. And I feel it at the shows I go to as a fan, you know, and always made me want to bring that level of energy to our shows, you know, when I go see like the Chili Peppers or the Who or whatever, you know, my favorite live bands. And I felt it, yeah.
What's interesting to me, Mark, is I've thought about this a bit. The world has changed so much. We don't watch the same TV shows at the same time. Even album releases, we don't get at the same time. Like live music and concerts and like live musical acts are almost in many ways like the last thing that we all convene together in person at the same time and experience the same emotions in kind of the same cycles. And I just think that there's just something unique to that you get to be a part of that. Is that something that you think about?
Yeah, it's sort of proving itself more and more as the industry tends to go more digital and all that. Live shows are where all the income is. It's the thing that's been the standard for all of these years. You know, the thing that's done the big swivel is the sales and the marketing world. That's all done a gigantic swivel. But the thing that's throughout is live performance and touring. And I just saw a really cool thing the other day with Dave Grohl doing an interview where he was just like, man, you just play. He's like, I don't know what the hell's going on with the music business anymore, but he's like, I know you, if you just go play, then you're doing your thing. You're doing it right. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. It's like, that's never going to go away. People wanting to see their favorite music live and see their favorite artists do the thing in the moment. That's just never going to go away. And so I feel very blessed to still be doing it at this age. And I hope I can do it when I'm an old man too, man. Let's go.
You went deep on covers early on. Like when I had Sony on, he talked about his audition and he said, the good thing I could play 42 REM songs that they played, in their set list because it gave me a leg up. I'm curious, like, when you think about covers and kind of like building your career as a musician, going deep on covers and spending a lot of time before you're writing your own material, learning other people's work. Is there something to that really helps you learn and develop the craft?
I think so. I think when you learn someone else's song, you're learning their arrangement and the way they approached it. Oh, why did he put the third on the bass on this chord and that kind of stuff? It can be inspiring, it's for when you go to write later. So there's certainly something to be said for that. And I've still to this day go deep on covers because on the side, one of the things I do is I lead a band, like a house band, for events, a lot of golf events, but I can do it for any event where there are singers at the event for maybe a charity event, and I'll put a house band together for all of their songs, and we have to learn whatever their hit songs are. And so over the last like 10, 15 years of doing that and being the house band leader, I've had to put together all the charts and arrangements and everything. And it's been a really good experience for me to learn how other people do it, what their approach is to songwriting and to arrangement and that sort of thing. And so I've really enjoyed learning that process as part of the craft of being a songwriter.
So when you're taking in all those different approaches and styles, does it get challenging at times to avoid comparing yourself to others or trying to do too many things at once? Like, talk about that.
Yeah, I never think about that part of it. I think that the things I've learned from learning other people's songs are just foundational, But when you're creating your own stuff in the moment, you're not thinking about the other person's stuff. Or to me, it's a very free process. Once I've got an idea in my head that I'm working on, and I might be on an instrument, or I might be just working out a lyrical melody idea on my laptop and writing down the flow of the rhythm of that line, like just what I said right there, the flow of the rhythm of that line. And I'll write other lines with the same flow with the rhythm of that line and so forth. And it's just like a creative process. And I'm never thinking about anyone else's stuff once I'm into my own idea or concept that I've come up with. And I'm also not going to chase down any concept that sounds like something else somebody else has already done. That's no fun for me if it's already been done. I want to create. I want to do something new. I want to break ground.
So I'm curious, if we fast forward a little bit, you guys are deep on covers in the early days. You're hanging up your own posters, you're booking your own gigs, you're playing live music, you're taking in all the kind of data that you're getting from your audiences that you possibly can. Then you start writing your own material. When you started writing your own material as Hootie and the Blowfish, did it come as easily as it did that night, when you were sitting at home with Lip at 16 years old?
We didn't do it all in one night, but yes, over the 3 or 4 year period that before Cracked Review, when we were writing as a band, yeah, it was very freeing for all of us. I think just like I could bring an idea that was a guitar riff, and then by the end of a practice session, Darius might have a melody over it, and Dean and Sony have put a groove to it that I would have never thought of from the way I wrote it, that kind of stuff. And we were developing a sound and a style that was all very organic early on. And I would say it came easy from the standpoint of, we were willing to put the work in. It was what we wanted to be doing. We were all showing up at the warehouse, at the shed, and I was doing some multi-tracking of our demos at the time and, that kind of stuff. And so we were all really into that process early on, I think. And we all still are in our own way. It's the four of us don't sit around at a practice warehouse because we all have our own homes and studios and stuff now. But yeah, like it came from a very organic, real place early on with Hootie, and I think we're all really proud of that. And it's a great part of the story.
It's absolutely a fantastic part of the story. I told Sony this story when he was on, and even when Edwin was on, he got a good laugh about this. I remember that I had albums and CDs that my parents had bought me, but the first CD I remember going out and buying by myself at a store in New Jersey, it was called Coconuts. They're long gone, was Cracked Rear View. I'll never forget it. That was the first CD I bought. And so I'm so grateful you guys put the work in, and I still enjoy it after all these years. I'm curious, when you think about all the success of Cracked Rear View, I know success in any discipline creates immense opportunity, but sometimes it creates challenges. You have this feeling that you have to kind of outdo what you did. You have to stay what, you seem to have made you successful. What would you say coming out of Cracked Rear View was maybe the biggest challenge for the band? Aside from maybe the obvious that just there was so much more attention and so many more commitments on your time.
Maybe just like, we didn't know how we connected so thoroughly with Cracked Rear View and so immensely. We didn't know how that happened. So it was that question of, do we keep doing what we've always been doing, which is what led us to this place, or do we have to change something now because it's so big, and nobody knew. There's no real or right answer to that, since nobody knew it was going to happen in the first place. So I think that was the challenge for us. It's just like, what do we do next? And I think if you listen to Fairweather Johnson, we stuck true to let's do what we know to do really well. And that was Fairweather Johnson. It was a Hootie album where you could hear us trying to make the record that we thought we would make next, not that everyone else thought we would make. And whether that was good or bad for us, I don't know. It still sold a ton of copies, obviously, and has some great songs on it. But I think that, that while we were making that record, that was certainly on everyone's mind. Like, do we change something here, or do we just keep doing what we do, And I think we were holding fast to our guns at that point. It's like, hey, doing what we know to do well is what got us here. Let's not stray too far from that,
Very, very well said, Mark. I'm curious, this was something, if I recall from one of my conversations with Sony, that he talked about. He talked about kind of shifting from where you were playing small venues to the big amphitheaters and the arenas, and that being a challenge. And I mean, obviously, it doesn't look like it's a challenge today. You guys have adjusted. Was that an issue for you personally as well? And how do you think you bridge that gap? Sony said it took a while for him.
Well, I didn't feel it as personally as I did for our whole band. I felt it with the band. We are a club band, because that's what we know. We've been playing small stages, 30 feet wide in clubs, for the last 5 years or whatever. All of a sudden, we're on 60 to 90 foot stages, and the Dean's way the hell over there now, that kind of thing. And it was a really big adjustment for us. Sony's right. And I wasn't thinking about it ever so much personally as how do we keep this tight fit that we had from being in the clubs and bring it to the big level? And what we decided to do early on was put a bar on the stage, because that made us feel at home, and it took up some space, and it allowed us to have friends sit at the bar on stage, which was kind of cool. It was almost like we were trying to create a little bar atmosphere on the stage as part of our production, and it worked. And we would let contest winners from radio stations in that area sit at the bar and shit like that. It was actually really a cool idea. Early on, that was the only thing we could think of to bridge that Dean was now 45 feet away from me, And then as time went on, Doc McGee talked us into doing a real set list. And then our production was able to work off of that. And now when you see us live summer, I mean, it's a great show. Aside from us being a great band and the set being really good of music, the production and everything is really tight as well. And it's a really nice overall show to see. I'm really impressed with what we've become. We're also better at what we do. I think everyone is better at their craft. I mean, I know I'm a better guitar player than I was when I was younger. And so I think we're maybe a tighter band than we've ever been to, on top of the production and everything, better show and all that, we're in a really good place.
Was there a moment for you, because I know other Hootie band members have talked about this too. Was there a moment for you though in 2019 where you guys got back out on tour where you weren't sure if the crowds were going to be the size that they were and the energy that they were, and it was you almost had this reassurance when you came out those first few nights? Did you feel that?
For me, we were still selling 8,000 or 9,000 tickets when we stopped touring back in 2008. I would have been fine if we came back to those numbers. So I didn't really feel any pressure to be all huge and successful again. And if we were able to just pick up that core fan base again, I'll be totally happy. So when we were selling out amphitheaters in 2019, I was total bonus. That felt like sugar on top to me. That did not feel like, oh, thank God. It felt like, oh my God, how cool is this? And that's exactly what it feels like now in 2024 too. It's like, I cannot believe our music connects this many people. And somehow it does. And I think the story of this tour is that every night, all the people that are coming to the show have their story about how the music, and it's not just us, Collective and Edwin as well, how all of our music connects with their lives. It might be through a death, sadly, or it might be from a graduation or a marriage, that kind of thing. And they all have their story about how the music connects. I had no idea how profound that was going to be at this point in our lives. And it really is. And it's the reason we're able to do this tour that we're doing. And it's probably the best story of the tour, is like hearing those people's stories.
It's so beautiful. It's so profound. So well said, Mark. I mean, like I said, you guys are out on tour. You're selling out amphitheaters, arenas on the summer camp with Trucks Tour with Collective Soul and Edwin McCain. But I want to get into your solo work. I mean, in addition to all the success with Hootie and the Blowfish over the years and the continued success, you have maintained your own kind of nonstop creative pace. I mean, you've released well-received solo albums. You produce an array of other artists. You even created and hosted your own Emmy Award-winning PBS concert series called Live at the Charleston Music Hall, which I know took years for you to bring together. You know, something I did at one point. I was an adjunct professor. You were an adjunct professor at the College of Charleston teaching a music industry course. I'm curious, like, is this something that was intentional for you during some of the Hootie hiatuses, or like just something that you have to always be working on something and constantly kind of pushing your personal and professional boundaries?
I always thought that we would just keep being the band and keep making records and keep touring. I would have been happy with that. But when we very smartly not to do that, that allowed me to go, okay, well, what else am I besides the guitar player for Hootie and the Blowfish? And having been a broadcast journalism major at the University of South Carolina led me to wanting to produce that TV show and host that TV show. It was the right opportunity at the time. Obviously, if the opportunity hadn't been there, I wouldn't have done it. You know, the opportunity was there, and I was able to use my skill set and put that into place. And that was a huge challenge. It did take years. It took a little bit of investment on my part, but definitely other sponsors to invest in as well, and that kind of stuff. And it was a giant undertaking in my life. But there are 11 episodes to show from it, and they're all great because I've worked with a great director, and I had a great team with me and feel very good about the endeavor. And I would love to do it again. But when it came time to do season 2, I turned my efforts towards this venture.
High seltzer.
Yeah. And this is a THC infused seltzer water, no alcohol, no sugar, no carbs. And it's water infused, which is a game changer because you feel it in real time as opposed to oil infused, which is what takes people an hour to feel gummy or whatever. We are game changing with high seltzer. It's a healthy way for people to get away from alcohol and sugar and things that are bad for their body. So I got on board with this early on because my partners just came up with a really, really healthy, beautiful product. And so I've been pulling the target back on this as well. My job was to bring it to South Carolina. About 2 years ago, they charged me with, hey, man, you're the guy that should bring this to South Carolina. And I'm like, you're probably right, but I don't know how to do this. So I dug in, and I was distributing high seltzer out of the back of my Suburban for about 6 to 8 months in South Carolina, all over the state until we got our. And so now we're getting ready to sign national distribution deals in different regions around the country. So I've seen it grow from this as small as it can get, starting in Kentucky, to now we're in multiple 30 states or something crazy like that. So that's been a really fun thing to be involved with. But it did keep season 2 from happening for Live at Charleston Music Hall.
What would you say, like when you think about the business side of all this, or I guess stepping back, I guess any side of all this, right? The TV production, the entrepreneurial venture with high seltzer, like what's something that you feel like has been surprising to you? Either way, like good or bad.
How much you got to still do it yourself to make it happen right. I mean, you can't do it without help and without a great team. And so the people you surround yourself with is really, really important. But at the end of the day, even as good as some people are at what they do, some things won't get done the right way unless you do it yourself. And so you just always, I don't think it matters what age you are or how successful you are in life, you always have to have that attitude of like, I'm going to have to pull myself up by the bootstraps and do this thing right. The more successful you get and the smarter you get with things, it's obvious that you want to feel like, oh, it should become easier. It should become easier to do. But that's just not the way life works. You're always required to dig deep.
I'm curious how this kind of all relates to the songwriting and like the musical artist side of you. I've heard you talk about this idea that sometimes you just get on a creative run and stuff's coming and coming and coming. And then sometimes you're in a little bit of a more of a creative kind of dry spell. When you're working on these other projects, does that spark ideas or does that kind of create the dry spell, or are they kind of both happening at the same time? The songwriting ideas and that creative run as an artist with some of the other ventures that you're involved in? I'm curious.
Ideas are always coming. I don't focus on that until I'm in the opportunity to be downstream with it. I never put myself in a stream creative. I have to have this song done by Friday, kind of. I don't have that in my life anymore. So all my creative endeavors are downstream. And so I'll collect ideas while I'm busy with other things. And then once it's time to go downstream with the creative side of my life, I let the ideas come out and I let them flow. So I just have them on reserve, I guess would be the best way to put it, until the time is right.
I recently had a conversation on the podcast with record-setting country songwriter Ashley Gorley. And we talked about this idea of like, how long does it take to write a great song? And he said, Andrew, it may be 15 minutes, it may be 3 hours, but there's probably weeks of kind of going about your business and your daily life where you're kind of collecting ideas. I think at the moment he held up his phone, he had about 14,000 voice memos, which he said, all have either become or might become a top country music song at some point. I'm sure you have a voice memo compilation as well.
I have a bunch of them. And, it's a wealth of material that you can pull from. And obviously the good ones rise to the top. But yeah, it's it's going on all the time. It's a fun. And listen, there's no way to answer that question of like, how long does it take to write a great song? And if anyone says there is, they're lying, because he's right. It could be 3 minutes, could be 3 hours, could be 3 days. My favorite story is the McCartney one. You can read it in his book. He was writing Yesterday, and he had the melody in his head for a few weeks, but he didn't have the lyrics yet. And then the only lyric he could come up with that kept coming back to his head was scrambled eggs. He wasn't going to write about scrambled eggs. So he went on holiday with Patty to France or something, and it all came flowing out of him while he was on holiday. He had to be somewhere else, and then his mind was in a different place, and then all the words that was scrambled eggs. But that's a great example of, he probably had the tune written quickly, but it took him a few weeks to get the lyric.
Mark, where do you think, like you have this prolific work ethic, this energy, this, like you said, I mean, at some point, sometimes you just have to like pull up your boots and go do it. I've heard you say also that your favorite baseball player, growing up, or, at some point in your life was Cal Ripken Jr. Like, I know you guys don't play every single night, right? You certainly haven't played 2,500 or whatever nights in a row, but you show up every night. And I'm curious, like, was it watching Cal Ripken? Was it other places? Like, where did that work ethic and that show up every day mentality come from? Like, for Mark Bryan, do you think?
Cal Ripken's a great, he gave me chills just by mentioning him. Because for sure, I mean, it's like, as a kid, he was the last one to stop signing autographs. He would sign everyone. And like, you knew he didn't have to. You knew he didn't have to. I remember being like, wow, he just is doing that. Like he's deciding, he's choosing to do that. Like, cause that's, and I was like, man, I want to be that cool. And Darryl Green was the cornerback for the Redskins. He was the same way, just back Art Monk, these guys, like, these are my idols. John Riggins, they were all class individuals. And by the way, they approached their sport and their job and their craft and their fans and all that. And so I think they were inspiring on that level, for sure.
I'm curious, Mark, as we get ready to wrap up our conversation, I know you're still out there touring with Hootie, much to the delight of fans like me and so many millions of others around the world. The solo work, I love the solo work you're doing. I love the new singles that you just released. So many different styles and unique musicality. I absolutely love it, and I hope everyone checks it out. But I'm curious, I mean, you're someone who's constantly pushing the envelope, pushing your boundaries. What would you say is your biggest area for growth as a songwriter, as a musical artist today, even after all the success that you've had?
I think it's like writing on different instruments, and therefore putting my fingers and hands in different places than I would on a guitar. And because of that, coming up with different songs and a little bit different styles, so I think that is an area of growth that's really obvious for me and maybe for the listener too, once they hear it. It's causing me to go in different directions in a good way.
What's something you worried about a ton 25, 30 years ago, plus that you just wish you hadn't spent so much time consuming your mind with?
Probably, that's a great question. I maybe trying to think of what I was worried about back then. It's probably that same kind of thing we were talking about earlier, a little bit of like image, but I don't feel like we ever let that get in the way too bad. But there definitely was that question after the success of Cracked Rear View of like, how much do we hold fast to what we already know and how much do we change? And I think the four of us were never able to answer that question within ourselves. And so it's just a tough one. I don't know if we could have worried about it less or more back then. I don't really know the answer, but that was certainly the hardest thing we were going through at the time is who are we now?
What is it? Have you thought about?
We're still trying to figure out, when you have that kind of success, it changes everything and it changes everyone's perception of you. So, I mean, we only know who we are now through being ourselves and being together and being around each other and touring like we're doing. It's hard for us to say how everyone else sees us, but I think that was something early on that was definitely something we had to concern ourselves with for whatever reason.
Do you ever think about this idea that there's probably a kid out there who's watching you and who's kind of having an experience kind of like you had that you just reflected on, thinking about Cal Ripken, thinking about Daryl Green and some of these others. And I want to do things the way Mark Bryan does. Like, is that something that you thought about?
I've gotten a few cool fan letters like that over the years. And it's really a great feeling when you feel like you've inspired somebody in a positive way like that. And I always try to respond and send them a pic or something cool, a personal response, that kind of thing, to thank them. And then it inspires you to continue to do that and go as far down that road as you can. And so, yeah, there's still that Cal Ripken in me that wants to stay and sign every autograph after the show and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I hope it stays with me always. It's the thing that I got from my favorite music, right? And from the people I was the biggest fans of. And I want to be able to return that feeling to the people who get something out of our music.
Well, Mark, you are well on your way. There is no question. You are a certified tarp puller. You are forever a part of the Everybody Pulls a Tarp family. I can't thank you enough for taking a few minutes out. I know you guys are busy selling out these stops every single night of this tour on the Summer Camp with Trucks tour. And you're also releasing a lot of your solo work now. Your 5th solo album popped. Some of the singles are already available and the rest are coming in October. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me. And most importantly, keep pulling the tarp. All right, Mark?
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Twitter at Andrew H. Moses. That's Andrew H. Moses. And be sure to sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Today is a great day to pull the tarp. I am rooting for you. See you next time.